A lot of small companies struggle because they don't know their costs. We see this a lot in trucking with small fleets and owner operators. They don't know their costs, which makes it hard to make good business decisions and ensure profitability. That's a problem, but we're going to help fix that right now by showing you how to easily calculate your costs per mile. Now, if knowing your numbers is important, why do people avoid this? Because it feels intimidating. Maybe you didn't do great in school, or math has always been difficult for you, or you feel like you should just know this already. It doesn't matter why. What matters is that in just a few minutes, we're going to make this really simple for you so you can earn more money and be more confident when it comes to running your trucking company. Right now, the trucking market is soft. Rates are low, there aren't enough good loads, and a lot of truckers are struggling. But this concept's important no matter how good or bad the market is. It's more important right now because being smart with your money means you have a better chance of keeping your company alive until the market improves. But even when rates are high, this just means you're making more profit and increasing how much money you earn. You'll be smarter about which loads you take and which ones you reject, better at negotiating, and happier overall, instead of being stressed out over not making enough money. And that's good for you, and it's good for the people that you care about. So let's make it happen. We're going to do this in two parts. First, we'll break down a couple of key concepts that you'll need to know, and then we'll take those concepts and calculate the cost for a hypothetical trucking company using Empower Trucking's free cost per mile calculator. There are three concepts we're going to explain: fixed costs, variable costs, and total cost per mile. So what is a fixed cost? Let's use Investopedia's definition, and then I'll make it simpler and give you an example. A fixed cost is a cost that does not change with an increase or decrease in the number of goods or services produced or sold. To make that simpler and apply it to trucking, these are costs that stay the same no matter how many loads you haul or how much you get paid for those loads. If you're a trucking company, these are expenses that you have to pay whether the load is 100 miles away or 5,000 miles away. For instance, if you're a one-truck owner-operator and you need an ELD, you pay $30 a month for that ELD on a 3-year contract. No matter how much or how little you drive, you're paying that $30 a month. It's a fixed amount. Whether you turn the truck on or you take a nap, you owe this money. It doesn't get cheaper or more expensive based on the things you do each day. So what is a variable cost? Again, using Investopedia's definition, a variable cost is a corporate expense that changes in proportion to how much a company produces or sells. Rising as production increases and falling as production decreases. As a trucking company, these costs increase or decrease based on things like how many loads you haul or how many miles you travel. For example, you're a one-truck owner-operator and you're looking at load A and load B. Load A is 100 miles and load B 1,000 miles. Fuel costs are about $4.50 a gallon regardless because that's the cost of fuel where you are right now. Trip A only needs about 15 gallons of fuel while trip B needs about 150. The total cost of fuel for trip A is about $67.50, but for trip B, it's $675. The total cost varies or changes depending on which load you choose. Alternatively, if you decide to take a nap that day and not haul either load, your fuel costs are zero. So what is cost per mile? QuickPay Funding shows this well. Cost per mile is your total expenses, fixed plus variable divided by the total miles you traveled. This is how much it costs you to run your trucking company based on every mile you drive. Fleetio provides a pretty good example in the image on the left. The fixed costs are $37,300. The variable costs are $144,800. You add those numbers together and divide that by 100,000 miles traveled. This shows their cost per mile is $1.82. That means if that company isn't making at least $1.82 per mile, they're losing money. Now, if this isn't perfectly clear yet, don't worry. You'll understand this better in a moment when we plug all this into the cost per mile calculator. Now we're looking at Empower Trucking's cost per mile calculator. This one is free and you can download it at empowertrucking.com/resources. Now that's EMPWRtrucking.com. I'll also include the link in the notes below so you can easily find it. Before we start, the most important thing to keep in mind is that you have to use the same time frame for the expenses you're putting into the calculator. That could be a week, a month, a year, whatever. We just have to break down the cost by that time frame so that we get the accurate cost per mile. You can actually see this mentioned in the note under the title here. It tells you you have to ensure all values entered are for the same time period. I like to use a 1-month time period. You know what happened last month and what your expenses were, how many miles you traveled, so this is a perfect way to figure this out. Your costs will change each month. So if you want to get even more specific, you can do this for the previous 3 months or the previous 12 months, and you'll be able to get a better idea of your costs. But for now, we'll just do a month. And if you haven't done this before, we recommend you also start with a month because it's fairly quick to put together and it's much better to have some information than nothing. If you look near the top of the calculator, it'll tell you to add information anywhere there's a blue box, and the green boxes will update automatically. I'm going to pretend I'm a one-truck owner-operator that does everything myself. Let's start with the miles section. I did 7,000 loaded miles last month, and about 3,000 of them were deadhead. Let's move down to fixed costs. Remember, these expenses don't change based on how much or how little you work or drive. They stay the same no matter what you do. My truck and trailer payments are about $900 every month. My insurance is about $1,000. Licenses and permits were $1,000 for the first year. Next year, they should be a bit lower, but since this is my first year, $1,000. You'll see that it says $83.33. If I double click in the cell, it shows 1,000 divided by 12 for 12 months. That's $83.33. Now, if you don't want to use Excel or Google Sheets for the calculation, just plug this into a calculator and type in the number that shows up there. I'm paying $30 a month for my ELD, about $90 a month in load board fees. Right now, I don't have TMS or dispatch software, so $0. And I pay about $125 for my telephone and internet. I don't have an office, I just work from home, but I do pay about $7 a month for a PO box rental. Below this section, you can add in any other fixed costs that you might have. You may have different costs than me, you may have additional costs, so you can add all of them in this area. I am paying about $250 to park my truck off site near my house, so I'm going to add that in. If you run out of room here, you can always just insert a row, and then you'll be able to add whatever that cost is. You can see that it's still including all these expenses, but I don't need that there right now. We can see my total fixed costs are $2,485.33. That means no matter what I do or don't do, I owe that amount of money each month. This is true if I work every single day or if I take a month-long vacation. I've got to pay that money. Those are my fixed costs. Now let's look at my variable costs. Remember, these costs increase or decrease based on things like how many miles you drive or how many loads you haul. My fuel costs are about $6,400, $6,428.57 to be specific. I pay myself about $6,000 every month. If I have a better month, I'd like to get that up a little bit, but I try to pay myself $6,000, although some months are better than others. Maintenance is about $1,250 every month. Parking is about $150. I always try to find free spots, but sometimes I gotta pay. I don't have any dispatch fees or use a service for that, so I'm gonna put that as $0. And right now I'm not factoring, which is fortunate, but I may have to. So if you are factoring, your factoring company should be able to show you exactly how much you invoiced and how much you got back, but chances are you're paying 2.5 or 3% for every load you factor, so you can calculate that off of your total invoices yourself. I paid about $250 in tolls, and I paid about $600 in food. I try to buy food at the supermarket and make it, but sometimes I've got to get it at a truck stop or at a restaurant. If I'm feeling really tired, I'll just have to buy something ready-made for me. That keeps costs down a little bit, but I could be a bit better there. I also spent $190 on scales last month. And again, in the section below, you can add any other variable costs you have. You can edit these. Most of these costs all truckers are going to have, but edit it, remove it, update, whatever makes sense for you. I spent $20 on toiletries last month, $25 on laundry, and every month I try to put money into my emergency savings or rainy day fund, at least $1,000. This way I can cover things in case my truck breaks down, there's some unexpected maintenance. This is the type of stuff that keeps my company surviving when the rates are low, or if I can't work because I got injured or whatever. I don't want to go out of business just because I didn't plan for a down market or some emergency. Now, we can see my total variable costs are $15,913.57. Again, this is a green cell, so the calculator just calculated that for me. And if we go to the section at the bottom, this has all been calculated for me. This is based on what we said at the top. I'm doing 10,000 miles, and it's taking my fixed costs plus my variable costs and dividing it by that 10,000 miles. So I know that it costs me 25 cents in fixed costs for every mile I travel, $1.59 in variable costs for every mile I travel, and $1.84 per mile total. So I need at least $1.84 per mile on every load that I take, or I'm losing money. I'm not able to pay myself a salary. I'm not able to cover my costs. In a leaner month, my salary may be smaller. I'm going to pay myself $4,000. We can see that immediately my cost per mile went down to $1.64 because my variable cost went down. If I have a better month and I want to pay myself $10,000, then I've got to be able to cover $2.24 per mile. So the calculator is going to do all the work for you. All you have to do is know what your costs were, which you should have because you have your receipts. You need to keep them for your accounting. So it doesn't have to be complicated. Now, I'll just change the salary back to $6,000 because what I was at before was $1.84 per mile, and we'll keep going with that. Now, I don't have to tell you that the market is rough right now. You may not get $1.84 per mile on every load, especially if you're in an area with cheap freight, which there's a lot of, unfortunately, right now. You can take a load for less than $1.84 per mile sometimes, as long as you make it up elsewhere on a better paying load. That's up to you. If you can't get the cost per mile to that number, though, you either have to find a way to get loads that pay more money, or you have to find a way to reduce your costs. There's no way around that, or you're going to work really hard and not end up making a profit. That may be necessary on some loads as you build up a book of business or if you have a bad month, but it's not sustainable long term. It's how companies go out of business, and this whole concept is about knowing your costs so you don't end up in that situation. As I said at the beginning of this video, it doesn't have to be complicated, and honestly, you don't even need this to be 100% perfect. It's okay if you're off by a few cents, or even a bit more than a few cents. You simply have to be able to get a good idea of your costs. So when you're looking at a load, you know when to negotiate, when to book, or when to walk away. If you have any questions at all about this, leave us a comment below or send us an email at support@empowertrucking.com. That's EMPWR trucking.com. You can also download the cost per mile calculator from www.empowertrucking.com/resources. And you can also sign up for the unleaded newsletter at www.empowertrucking.com/newsletter. It's free and we send out key industry info every week. And lastly, you can always check out more free resources at empowertrucking.com. All of these links are on the screen right now. I'll paste them below the video. And really, we hope this helps you build a strong and profitable business. And until the next time, stay empowered.